Live on the Upper West Side?
I did indeed. How about yourself?
My wife and I lived on Roosevelt Island,
Oh, sure.
if you know where that is. So we
Oh,
take the Spider-Man tram or the F train, but
yeah, exactly. I know just where that is.
yeah. So my wife worked with ABC News and Morning America, so her offices were right across from Lincoln Center. And I was a chef with Mario Batali, more downtown.
Oh my goodness.
And Odo, and then Del Posto. So we get back about twice a year, and now I have an excuse to go to the New York Pops. I can think, remember that guy? You your boss?
Well, now I got to ask you: are you glad to be here, or would you rather be back there?
My parents are from here. I grew up here. My wife's grew up here, went to college here. So when we started to settle down and talk about having kids, we had to outsource and delegate that upbringing to the grandparents. So change careers, join the family brokerage firm, and have really never looked back. We in the money management universe, we have some clients in New York and New Jersey. So we do get out about twice a year. And I have a younger sister who's out there. So for this stage in our life, having more than 400 square feet, being able to park a car without paying $500 a month, I love everything about it. It's hard to defend. We don't have 20,000 restaurants like New York. You don't have the arts that you may have at that caliber for a 10 million person metropolis. But for where I am now, I love Indianapolis. We're thrilled to have you here. So, but no, I'd say you end up defending some nuances, but I wouldn't change anything.
That's exactly how I feel. I was 25 years in New York, almost 25 years.
Wow, neat.
And we raised our kids. We had two young kids that we were in a small apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I wouldn't trade this for the world. I think if I need to visit New York, I've got a great airport that's 20 minutes away. But yeah, this is a far higher quality of life as far as I'm concerned.
So are your kids here, or do they stay on the East Coast?
No, my kids are now 20 and 16. So one is at Riverside High School. She's going to be a junior there, and my older daughter is going to Long Island University in New York, studying musical theater. So she got the arts bug from her dad, I'm afraid.
And that fits in with some of my questions later of, we have a third and a fourth grader taking guitar lessons. I was watching some of the YouTubes your musicians have put online, the music memories, where they're sharing the song that really impacted them to pursue the passion, or the good habits they picked up from their parents. So luckily, my kid's mom can sing and sings in the car, and I feel like that's one of the instrumental kind of rudimentary ways to kind of share that passion with the kiddos.
Oh, that's great. Good for you. Always give your kids an opportunity to explore music on whatever terms make them comfortable and happy. I think that's terrific. But I think every kid should be introduced to music and given that opportunity.
So then what would your daughter major in at Long Island?
She's getting her Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater. So she's singer, dancer, actor, and she's going for it.
Oh, fun. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and get started kind of filling in for President Graham. So my name's Eric Steele from Plan Investment. I'm the incoming president starting this fall. Please use the mute button, the bottom left button that looks like a microphone, or the space bar to turn mute on and off. Please stay muted during the meeting. If you'd like to talk, unmute yourself and then turn it back off when you're finished. You don't have to use the camera for video meetings. You can, the bottom left button that looks like a camera, we'll turn that on and off. And it looks like we have a higher than average participation with cameras. So hi, Nancy. Club announcements. All new member dues have been postponed until October 1st, 2020. Bill and Rob Schlegel and Duke Haddad were at our golf outing yesterday, which I think was a very, very positive first impression to a couple prospects. Duke, I'm going to send Kurt a pre-signed membership application. I'm going to send a couple of Jason Burke's peers new membership applications. So I do feel like that itch is out there with some of these young professionals of what can we do with either the time or treasure. So I'll put another golf outing together in August, and maybe we can do one in October. I found out our new member, Max Harper, who Graham brought in, is a degenerate gambler who will be able to get out with a Rotary and try to get into some of the Rotarian golfers' pockets too. So if anybody wants to play Rotary golf, they get out a lot. David Leonard's their golf chair. I want to say they play every other week. So kind of folding into their competitive spirit with that little part of our club would be a lot of fun. All in-person club meetings have been canceled through September 10th. Our board will continue to meet and keep the discussion going and keep the communications coming with these updates. We hope you'll consider giving to our foundation in lieu of the canceled programs toward our legacy campaign. We are at $93,325 of our $105,000 goal. There are also 2 foundation board positions available starting January 2021. Ask Taylor or Tina for an application if you have any questions. Trina, would you mind? Oh, you read my mind. If you'd like to make a donation, Trina hit the PayPal link. If we have any guests, looking at the attendance, Jester Jersey, Janet Lawrence, Chris Conrad. We do have a handful of guests from across the country again. Russ Yelverton, it's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Greetings, everyone. This is your usual company from Jamaica.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us today.
I'm Gerslyn Reed Holman, and there's Janet Lawrence, Janelle Allen, Sonia Liebert, Pam Lowe. We have a few members with you, and we're wishing you all that it's good. Please wear your mask and stay safe, because we're trying our best here in Jamaica, working with COVID-19 and the Sahara dust. So I hope it doesn't get your way. Have a great meeting.
Judith and Sandra is also online, you see.
As well. Sandra Davis is on as well.
And Judith Francis.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Judith is going to lose power soon, so I hope she gets a chance to stay on. The electricity is going to go in her area.
Great.
Well, everybody.
So now, curiously, how is the Jamaican Club handling meetings going into the fall?
Well, we are still looking at continuing the online meeting.
What is happening with COVID? We still have weekly meetings online on GoTo. We use GoTo. Some members, other clubs use Zoom, but we still have a weekly meeting that lasts sometimes up to 2 hours. And we do projects where we take items that are needed in children's home and people who are needy, we do packages for them. So we still get involved, but we're not planning for face-to-face meeting right now. We're watching what is happening with COVID-19.
Yeah, I think that'll be a discussion point for us in the coming months is what service projects are we able to do and implement, and what committees do we have that could use our club support getting out in front of some of our favorite causes.
We try. It's not so easy to get projects done, but it is convenient for us to take the needed things like the sanitizers, the tin food that are needed, groceries that people will always need. Some cannot get out, the elderly, the physically challenged or disabled. We try and get stuff to them so that they don't have to be in need. So we try and do things that are without keeping physical distance in mind.
No, that's great. And looking at one of the chats, Wendy Paddock is working on putting together a social gathering for us to get together after work and see each other. It was nice seeing the group of guys yesterday, three-dimensionally. With that, I'm going to go into the introduction to our lovely speaker today, Mr. James Johnson, the Chief Executive Officer of the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. He began his tenure in Indianapolis on April 30th, 2018. In his role at the ISO, he is tasked with advancing the mission by establishing the organization's strategic plan and marshaling the human and financial capital to achieve success. With an annual budget of more than $27 million, the ISO presents more than 180 performances each year, which blew my mind how they're able to find time to practice for all of those different compositions. And these reach nearly 300,000 community members annually, with their home at the Hilbert Circle Theater and its residency at Conner Prairie. And they touch nearly 50,000 students' lives also. And I'd be curious how Conner Prairie and outdoor venues or formats kind of moving forward kind of play into this current environment. Prior to accepting the position in Indianapolis, Mr. Johnson served as president and CEO at the Omaha Symphony for 7 years. Before that, he served as a CEO at the New York Pops, close to my heart, having spent my formative years in New York, and held operation positions at the Orchestra of St. Luke's and Martha Graham Dance Company. He earned a Bachelor of Arts from Pacific Lutheran University, an MBA, and a Master of Arts in Administration from SMU. James has served as chair of the League of American Orchestras Managers Committee, president of Arts Omaha, and a recipient of the 2018 Dick and Mary Holland Leadership Award from the Omaha Symphony. It's my distinct pleasure to turn it over to Mr. Johnson.
Eric, thank you so much for that kind and thorough introduction. It's great to join you, and I wish you a good afternoon. It's nice to see a few faces I recognize. Hey, Raleigh Dick, hope you're there. Nice to see you. I hope I'm going to share my screen with you if that's all right. And what I'd like to do is give you a few minutes of presentation, but then offer you the opportunity to ask me whatever kinds of questions you'd like. Let's see if this will work. How does that look? Can you see my screen? Yeah, okay. So I have, today I want to just, again, thank you for the invitation to join you. The Kiwanis Club has actually been very meaningful to me. About 100 years ago, and when I was a teenager, the Kiwanis Club of Fife, Washington sponsored me at Boys State. Was one of the formative experiences of my life, I have to say, and the lessons learned there still resonate with me today. So as I said, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview, kind of a presentation this afternoon, but I'd also appreciate any kinds of questions that you may wish to ask, and I'll leave time at the end for that purpose. We've been in the news quite a bit as an organization the past few days. And would be very happy to share with you some observations on what's happening exactly at this moment. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the ISO, talk to you about how we've been impacted by COVID-19, and then what I see as our plan for the future. So as Eric mentioned, my background is I've been here for about 2 years. I joined the organization as CEO in 2018. I have 35 years as an arts administrator, 20 years as an orchestra CEO, and I am a musician by training. In my youth, I played bass. So since this is Throwback Thursday, I want to share with you that while I was a musician in my youth, I think I was always born to be an administrator because I've always worn a tie, even in my, as a second grader. So there you go. There's the future CEO in second grade. My work is generally behind the scenes as a CEO. But those of you who attend concerts by the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra may know me as the guy who tells you to turn off your cell phone at the start of concerts. And I generally do that except when things like monster trucks roar onto the stage. So hope I'll see you at a concert soon. So I want to share with you what I believe is my personal mission as the CEO of the Indianapolis Symphony. And that is really to grow and gather the resources so that the ISO can serve our community with life-changing musical experiences now and in the future. My life was changed by music, and it continues to be refreshed and renewed every time I attend a concert. Sometimes I'm asked, what does it take to be the CEO of an orchestra? And almost number one on my list is you've got to be passionate about the music, because you're going to be hearing a lot of concerts in my position. And so it's important to love it and to find energy and renewal in the music. A little bit of an overview of the ISO. We were founded in 1930 by Ferdinand Schaefer. So the orchestra is celebrating its 90th anniversary this year. Our mission is to inspire, entertain, educate, and challenge. And we do that by playing music at the highest artistic level. Perhaps even more important than that mission is the vision of the ISO, or the values. We are one team, and we are committed to achieving that mission by devoting ourselves to outstanding performance, by performing service in our community. We want to foster a culture of trust and mutual respect. And important to me, we want to be flexible and openness to change. And that's certainly required in the current environment, to be flexible in every way. Eric gave you a little bit of an overview of the organization in terms of the statistics. We perform something like 150 to 180 concerts each year. We reach about 300,000 attendees, and our budget this year is about $28 million. All told, we are Indiana's largest performing arts organization by far. And to give you kind of an example of the depth and breadth of the orchestra, this is the extent of our marquee activity. So you can see we do classical music concerts, we do pops concerts, we accompany film as an orchestra. We have something called Happy Hour at the Symphony, where we welcome millennials and Gen Xers to get to know our music and our organization. I'm sure many of you have attended concerts at Kroger's Symphony on the Prairie. It's really unfortunate this year we're unable to do those concerts. Also during the summertime, we do a lunch break series, very popular with $5 tickets. And then I'm sure that many of you on this call have attended our Yuletide celebration, which is a perennial favorite and unique in the nation in terms of holiday performances by an orchestra. Well, this is what the orchestra looks like generally on the stage, and they are a good-looking group. But I also want to tell you about a program that is near and dear to my heart, and that is the Metropolitan Youth Orchestra, which is a youth and family development program of the Indianapolis Symphony, and it's led by Crystal Ford. And this program serves 230 children each year, children and their families. We don't look upon it as a training orchestra for the symphony. This is a way to reach kids who may be from disadvantaged backgrounds with a thorough and comprehensive music program. And it really is changing lives through music. And it's something that we're very proud of I'm very proud to be part of and supportive. To give you an example or an overview of the people of the ISO, these are my colleagues. We have 3 conductors, a large group of full-time musicians, librarians who handle the music. We have full-time stagehands and as well an administrative staff which is supporting this activity. We are governed by a 51-member volunteer board of directors and 10 trustees. And I want to point out that Raleigh Dick, who is on the call today, is one of those trustees and a longtime supporter of the ISO. His wife, Sherry, is one of our board of directors as well. We're also supported by a large group of volunteers who are members of the ISOA, or they volunteer as part of our Usher Corps, which numbers in the hundreds. Our leadership, our musical leadership we are led by music director Christoph Urbanski, who you see here in this photo. He has been our music director now for 10 years and will be stepping down at the end of next season. Our principal pops conductor is Jack Everly, and Jack has been with us since, I believe, 2003 or 4, and will be with us for many years to come. I'm very hopeful. Jack is really the brainchild behind the perennial favorite Yuletide. Our home is at the Hilbert Circle Theater on Monument Circle, and in the summertime we're at Conner Prairie. So this gives you an overview of the breadth of our activity and who the people are. I did want to spend, because I am a CEO and I know that many of you are business people, I did want to spend a few minutes talking to you about the finances of the orchestra. It's the thing that I wake up thinking about and go to bed. Sometimes it invades my dreams as well. You can see, as I mentioned, we're a $28 million budget. And this gives you a really broad overview of how do we get to that number. And you can see that on the revenue side, we sell about $11 million worth of tickets each year. And for an orchestra, that is an impressive amount, I can tell you right now. And it's one of the things that attracted me to this orchestra, was how aggressive it is in doing ticket sales. We also earn some money through revenues and food and beverage sales, but tickets is our primary driver, on our highest single driver of revenue. We also seek contributions from the community each year in the neighborhood of $8 to $9 million. And then we have an endowment, the orchestra. It is controlled by a separate organization called the ISO Foundation, and they provide resources to the ISO each year. Last year it was $6.5 million. The year before that, nearly $5 million. So that's our total revenue picture, but you can see our expenses are actually a little higher than revenues. And so we've been running deficits for the past 2 years, and that certainly has been something that's keeping me up at night and is a real challenge to us going forward. How do we build a more sustainable operation for the future? I did want to give you a sense of the mix of revenues and expenses. So you can see here that in the red are the earned revenues for the organization. That comprises about 44% of our budget. Contributions are about 1/3, and then the rest comes from our endowment. You may be wondering, that doesn't seem like a sustainable business model, in the sense that you'd think that ticket sales would cover way more of the budget than it does. But actually, compared to most orchestras of our size in the country, this is actually a very healthy picture. Many orchestras earn only 1/3 or even less of their budget through ticket sales. The rest has to come from contributions and through their endowment. And then I wanted to give you a sense of, well, now where is that money going to that you're spending? And this is a number that, while of course we don't want to have deficit budgets, I'm proud of the fact that of those numbers, 85% of our expenses go towards programming. That includes the cost of producing the concerts and the education programs. Only 10% is administrative cost, and then about 5% is the cost of fundraising. And if you look at that among charities across the country, that is an excellent ratio. of expenses. Program expenses should be by far the highest amount that you're spending, and we do indeed devote most of our resources towards programs. I want to spend a little time talking about how COVID-19 has impacted the orchestra. The budget picture that I just shared with you really is based upon normal operating scenario, and certainly we had our challenges prior to COVID-19, but it has created real challenges since it's come on the scene. So I tell you that in early January, I began to hear from orchestras in Asia about this new threat, the coronavirus. And then American orchestras who had tours scheduled for overseas began to cancel concerts in late January. Well, then I knew that something was on the horizon, and we began monitoring the situation very closely throughout February. And then, of course, had to make the decision to begin canceling concerts. So the last performance of the ISO took place on Tuesday, March 10th. It was a children's concert, part of our Discovery series. And since then, we have been shuttered as an orchestra. And we are, like almost every other orchestra in North America, not able to perform at this time. And that's pretty much true of orchestras around the world. Generally speaking, you can see that, actually I wasn't able to include this slide, but I can tell you that so far we've canceled 75 concerts. Ticket sales are down by about $3 million, and donations are down by about $2 million. So we have already experienced a significant impact on our budget as a result of COVID-19. But you know, the greatest impact, I have to say, has been on the people of the ISO. Since we got that, we had to begin canceling concerts, and when we realized the severe economic impact that would be caused, we've had to furlough, lay off, or terminate 107 of our employees. That includes all of our musicians and librarians, all of our stagehands, and 29 of our staff members have all been laid off, furloughed, or terminated. So currently we are operating with a staff of 31 full-time employees. Many of those employees are on reduced compensation. So the impact has been really very, very strong on this organization. And I think it's safe to assume that this impact is going to will last for a while. It's clear to me that there will be no return to normal for the ISO until a vaccine is found, or we have comprehensive treatment for COVID-19. I suspect this will not be until 2021 at the earliest that we'll see a return to normal. I think the impact, while we may be able to give concerts as normal in 2021, I think the impact will be felt for years as a result of the economic distress that it's caused. So we're anticipating that ticket sales and donations will be impacted for quite a while. So the question really then becomes, well, what can you do as an orchestra in the time of COVID-19? And if we are able to resume operations at some level in 2019, we will have to observe social distancing on stage, backstage, and in the auditorium. And fortunately, because of the advances in technology, we do believe that we would be able to stream online our concerts and education programs for audiences in central Indiana and perhaps around the world. So that is the new reality. If you were to attend a concert of the ISO during this time, this is what you could expect. Audiences would be required to wear masks. Masks and gloves would be required for all employees. That may include some musicians on the stage. Seating would be spread apart and socially distanced, both on stage and in the auditorium. For those of you who've been to Hilbert Circle Theater, you know it's not a large auditorium, but it's pretty good size. We have more than 1,600 seats, And our current estimates suggest that we would be able to accommodate an audience of only about 300 people in the Hilbert Circle Theater Auditorium. One other thing you would see if you attended a concert, we would have very visible cleaning procedures ongoing at all times to provide reassurance to our patrons that we are looking after them. So as we were contemplating this return to giving concerts during COVID-19, I've asked my team to think about these priorities, and I'm not alone in suggesting these priorities. This is actually a document was created by the Indianapolis Arts Council and will become in general circulation in the coming days. But the priorities that we've got to think about during this time are safety, equity, innovation, and collaboration. And I'll wrap up my comments just by focusing on these concepts and what they mean generally. With regard to safety, and safety is first in all of this, we have to protect the health and safety of our employees, the artists and volunteers, and it just has to be first and foremost. And in some ways, safety is going to impact what we're able to do and how often we're able to do it in terms of the numbers of concerts, where those concerts are held, and how many people can attend as an audience, and how many people can be on the stage. It's really important, I think, in this time, though, we've certainly seen, and it's something I haven't spoken about yet, but one of the impacts that we have all been experiencing as a society is to become a more equitable institution, as we need to become a more equitable society generally. And so we've got to look at all of our programs through the lens of equity, and we need to work on ways to expand and accelerate our work in equity, diversity, and inclusion. This is work that we have been making a priority for the past couple of years, but there's certainly real urgency at this time to make sure that this is a priority for our institution in all that we do. Our work is going to require a tremendous amount of innovation, getting back to those values of openness and flexibility. That will be required from our musicians, from our staff, from all of our stakeholders. We're going to have to be very creative during this time if we're going to make an attempt to serve on our mission. And then finally, we've got to be collaborative. And perhaps that's something in short supply right now at the ISO, but it is a priority for us that we work together across our institution, within our institution, so that we can be successful as an orchestra in the time of COVID-19. Those are my prepared remarks. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you this afternoon, and I'd be very pleased to take any questions you might have.
Thanks, James. We have a couple from Eric on the chat. Others, feel free to post questions in the chat. We'll try to moderate. If it's easier for you to speak your question, let me know. We'll call on you and unmute you. I have one before we get started. So you're extremely talented and sought after, no doubt. What made you decide that Indianapolis was your next home?
Oh, that's very kind of you to ask, and you're very flattering. I did have to compete for the job. They didn't just come and pluck me out, and there was good competition. But when I look at Indianapolis, of course, the symphony itself, I love the fact that this is an innovative and entrepreneurial orchestra. Looking at productions like Yuletide, there is nothing like it in the country. I have been following that production for the past 30 years, and I'm very familiar with the success of that, for example. But also the depth and breadth of these programs, and particularly the innovative education programs, are something that really speak to me as somebody who cares about music and wants to make sure we're sharing it in the community. And then frankly, the community itself is one that I just really treasure. I think we are a Midwestern city. I like the values of a community like this. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and spent my formative years in New York City, so you wouldn't necessarily expect that I would be a Midwesterner at this point in my life. But I have to say, I'm really proud of the values that we hold dear. We take care of our own, we support our institutions, and we want to make a very strong quality of life. It's important for people in this community that we support each other.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I've got just one comment that I want to congratulate James on only spending 5% on fundraising. I think that's extremely important and very important to your donors, that you only spend 5% raising those funds. I think it's a wonderful figure.
Thank you. I'm glad that stood out for you. It's one that I'm proud of as well. We really are devoting most of our expenses to programming. We've obviously got to rein in those expenses a little bit because we've been overspending the past couple of years, and we're focused on doing that. But I'm certainly not predisposed to start spending more on fundraising. We really want to make sure our donors' dollars are going to the right places.
Well, this is my 50th year with Riley, so I'm coming from an area that I think I know something about.
Congratulations.
James, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about under normal times, the longevity of your musicians. Is there turnover? And then I'll piggyback that with a second question of how do you retain that top talent?
That's a great question, Trina. The ISO has traditionally been considered, in the industry, we call it a destination orchestra. In other words, you as a young musician, you have trained for years and years and attended conservatory, and then it comes time to audition for a spot in the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. Typically, a musician auditioning for us is probably one of 90 to 100 musicians that we will audition for any one position in the orchestra. So it is incredibly competitive to win a spot in the ISO. And once you have won that spot, you are very likely, this could be the place you stay for life. And so we typically have very little in the way of turnover among our musicians. Once in a while, we have a real firecracker who will look for a job in an even bigger institution or orchestra. But for the most part, the musicians that we hire, this is where they stay. And so we're interested in working with them for the long haul. They're interested in making Indianapolis a better place because this is where they intend to make their lives.
Do they hold the spots until they decide they don't want them anymore, or do they re-audition?
We are like a university system, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. There's a process for earning and winning tenure in our orchestra. It takes about 2 years to win tenure after you've first got the job. But then once you have won tenure in the orchestra, then it becomes very, very difficult to replace those tenured musicians. And then once you're in, you're in. You don't have to re-audition. I mean, in severe cases, we have put musicians on probation, and there have been rare circumstances when we have dismissed musicians, but it's very seldom that we do that. And so I will say that Robert Goodlett, one of our bass players, has been with the orchestra for 49 years. And he's playing great. He sounds amazing. But if you do the math, he is now in his 70s.
That's
you
impressive.
said that you could only seat maybe 300 in the fall. Do you feel it's important to get back on stage, back in the public, even though you obviously are going to lose money selling only 300 tickets? And then maybe as a second question, which 300 people get to come?
Rob, those are two of the questions that are really foremost on our minds right now. I would like to be able to get our musicians back together, to employ them once again in the fall. I think it would be a really meaningful gesture to have them back to work, and I would like to be creative in how we use them. So for example, there's nothing to say that we have to perform only at Hilbert Circle Theater. We could have groups of musicians playing at museums, at hospitals, at public places. There's any number of ways that musicians can share their music with our community. And I think if we can, we're going to try and make a go of it. It's going to be really challenging though, because we won't have any kind of ticket sales to speak of compared to what we would normally expect. I imagine that the 300 will be, perhaps it'll be a lottery system where we'll give donors and subscribers the first dibs on those tickets. And then any that are not claimed would go to the public. But very importantly, we will make streaming of those concerts a priority as well, so that if you are a member of this community and you, number one, don't get a ticket or don't feel safe coming to Circle Theater in the fall, you could enjoy the orchestra's performances online.
Thank you.
So speaking of performing in interesting places, can you talk about your role with the Shining a Light on Monument Circle?
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for the, it's a good question. That project was one that came to us about 2 years ago now, when the Lilly Endowment funded the program. I believe this is, are you talking about, well, I'll cover both things. So the daily performance on Monument Circle with the light show, we were fortunate to be asked to provide the soundtrack for that daily celebration. Our principal trumpeter, Conrad Jones, plays the most chilling and hair-raising version of taps that I have ever heard on that recording. And he's a remarkable artist that really are proud to call a member of our orchestra. And we recorded that soundtrack on a Monday night at Circle Theater, and now it's being heard nightly on Monument Circle.
Talk to us a little about the search for the music director. How's that going? And what can you do during these times?
Oh, we have a young woman named Katie McGinnis, who is our director of artistic planning, and she's a firecracker herself. She's got our board, our musicians, and our staff whipped into shape. They are working hard to find the next music director of the ISO, and she has. We put together a list of our wants and needs for that next music director, and we're doing a worldwide search for that individual. And I can tell you, I think it's very important that the qualities that they have identified that we are seeking in our next music director speak to, number one, someone who cares about our community and is devoted to public service, somebody who cares about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, someone who has high standards musically, but we really need someone who's going to be a real beacon for Indianapolis as our music director, not only attracting the best artists from around the world to come to Indianapolis, but also reaching out to the community in new ways to show how we can be of service as an institution in this community. So we've got, actually, we're down to about 12 candidates that we're going to be, we're looking at very, very hard. We'll be bringing those candidates in when we can resume performing, but even now, when we are unable to perform, we are doing our research and evaluating those candidates, and so the work is going on, and that committee is meeting every 6 to 8 weeks, even now, to evaluate who we've got and what we want to do as our next steps.
There's big shoes to fill.
It is, and Christoph has been a wonderful artist and really quite an amazing conductor. And I will say we've enjoyed our 10 years with him. The tenure of a conductor is generally about a decade or so. They bring a great deal of energy, musical ideas, but I suppose it's in some ways it's like CEOs. We don't necessarily last forever. We've got a certain amount of energy and inspiration that we can bring to an institution, and but then there's sort of an expiration date on that as well. And then we move on, the institution moves on, and that's the natural flow of things. So everything is transitioning very well, I would say, as we identify his successor.
So talking about the energy that you bring, again, COVID aside, where coming into this, where did you want to focus your energy? Did you have something in mind? This kind of puts you on the spot. Sorry, it sounds like an interview.
No, absolutely. Look, I guess if the question is, as CEO, I really am committed to the concept of an orchestra. I think an orchestra can be life-changing for young people, for audiences of all ages. I think we have something that is contemporary to offer. I don't think orchestras as an institution are in decline or they're a relic of the 19th or 18th century. I think we speak to audiences today. But I do think these orchestras need tremendous support going forward. And so my goal is to put the ISO back on its feet and to make sure that my successor, whenever that will be, and I hope it'll be a long time from now, can come into an institution that is financially stable and has very strong roots throughout the community.
Thank you. I have another question in the chat. And again, please feel free to post additional questions. Eric wrote that he had a chance to see Lord of the Rings performed at Radio City Music Hall. And I know several of us have enjoyed Star Wars here, Harry Potter. I was trying to remember what else I've seen in there. Are you guys looking to increase or to continue on with other series in the Bank of America film series? Post-COVID, of course.
Yeah, no, that's, one of our great disappointments was we had to postpone our presentation of Mary Poppins with orchestra. We also we're the Star Wars 7, I forget the name of the title, Last Jedi, I guess it was also one of the films that we had to postpone. There's just an endless number of films that seem to be coming available. I don't know if you're familiar with the Pixar films, but one of my favorite is called Up. It's a beautiful story of renewal and rebirth. And that's one of the films that we hope to announce soon to be played with orchestra. We may go back to the Harry Potter series as well. If you've never experienced it, I can tell you that this is one of those programs which is all ages, all generations. I've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark 1,000 times. It's one of my favorite movies. When I experienced it with an orchestra, it was a new experience. It was completely new for me. It was thrilling in every way. So I would tell you that even a movie as that you've seen as so many times, like Casablanca, when you experience that with orchestra, you will be experiencing a film in a new way. It's really worthwhile to bring young people, and frankly, that's how we get the teenagers to get interested in the ISO, because they've got a favorite movie, they hear it with the orchestra, and something clicks, and they say, wow, I want to know more about music. Maybe I'll start coming to these classical concerts. Whatever it takes, we're going to be out there giving great music to people of all ages.
Do you think with that return from generating new interest and new fans that it's worth the financial investment to get the rights to perform that? There was a question about, is it prohibitively expensive? And my guess is no, because you continue.
Well, I would say the movies themselves are really expensive. Those film companies don't give away their product for nothing. You'd be astonished how much they charge to show a movie that came out 40 years ago. It's incredible to me that they are the rates they're getting. But and I will just want to say, our goal with these movies, with any of our performances, I don't want to make you have to love classical music. That's not the goal of presenting Star Wars or Mary Poppins or Beauty and the Beast. We want to reach you where your interests lie. And if your interests are film music, well, we've got something wonderful for you. If your interest is holiday music, it doesn't get any better than Yuletide. If you want to experience music on a blanket outdoors, we've got that covered too. And that's one of the things that attracted me to the ISO, was the underlying value in all of what we do is we do these concerts with at the highest quality we possibly can. We don't take anything for granted. We want to make that experience, whether you're coming to a film, Yuletide, classical concert, whatever it is, we want to make that experience first class, the best you can get in every way. And again, if that's how you want to experience the ISO, I'm all for it.
Fantastic. I love that there is something for everyone and there's different entry points for each of us.
Absolutely.
Someone had submitted a question that with young athletes, there's a tendency to get burned out. How do you keep the young musicians from getting burned out? How do you help them stay excited and inquisitive? And maybe the same thing for the 40-year performers.
That's true. Yeah, it's in so many ways they're so talented, these young musicians. We try to give them some really challenging opportunities to play music. So, Eric was asking, how do you possibly rehearse for all this music? And that's one of the gifts for these musicians, that they're able to play anything and very quickly. So the challenge for them is to have experiences that are at the highest artistic level, playing sometimes very challenging music. It's like a pro athlete. If all they ever did was walk around a track, well, that wouldn't be that interesting. But put them in a Super Bowl once in a while, and wow, that's what they live for. That's the same thing for our musicians. We want to give them opportunities to work with the world's greatest musicians, playing some of the world's most challenging but wonderful music. That's what they get excited about. And you can ask our players at any point in time. You can say, well, now what are you looking forward to next year? And they will tell you exactly which 5 pieces of music they are most excited to play. They've already looked at the schedule. They've marked it off on their calendar. In some cases, they're already practicing that really hard lick that they're going to have to play in that symphony. And that's what challenges them year after year.
Do any of your musicians get a say in what might be coming in future seasons?
Very definitely. They are part of we have an artistic planning committee, but they are also, musicians will come to our conductors, or they'll come to Katie and offer suggestions about pieces they'd like to play. And we take those suggestions very seriously, and very frequently we'll program them. It could be oftentimes what they're looking for is, I've got this great solo in this particular symphony, so would you mind putting that on the schedule next year? And very frequently we will.
That is fantastic. I love the amount of collaboration, and it speaks to your core values and your aims. I'm going to turn it back over to Eric to wrap things up. I feel like I could chat with you all day. I really appreciate this.
Well, I'd be glad to come back anytime. So thanks for the invitation. Appreciate it. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Eric? Oh, you're muted.
Amateur.
There you go.
Amateur. Thanks again, James, for your time. We will email a certificate of appreciation, and a donation will be made in your name to Teachers Treasures, which helps teachers help students by obtaining and distributing school supplies free to Marion County teachers of students in need. We'll be hosting another Zoom meeting next week on July 2nd with David White, professor at Seton Hall University. He's a hostage negotiation expert. So much more boring than today's conversation. And we'll keep the Zoom meeting open for the next 30 minutes. If anybody would like to stay on and socialize, I am going to hop off and get back to work. If anybody hasn't been to the Indy Symphony YouTube page, in this time where we can't see and touch and hear everything live, I was watching it for about an hour and a half last night, where it is a nice venue. I'd say get on your admin staff to increase that video a day, James, would be great. But no, like there are these nice 3 to 4 minute interviews with the musicians who walk through their own career and journey. And my favorite is the Stand By Me video, where all your young musicians collaborate. That's my wife's favorite song. She's on the verge of tears. She's emotional, but no, she was on the verge of tears. That's so touching, seeing those young musicians perform at the level they do. So that being said, I love seeing everybody's face today on these Zoom meetings. And thanks again to our speaker, James.
Thanks very much. Take care, everyone.
All right.